All right, everybody, today we're going to be breaking down XRP, what's happening with Ripple, and is it about to have a massive breakout? You don't want to miss it. I've got a special guest today as well. My name is Paul Barron. Welcome back into Tech Path. I do want to thank our sponsor today, and that's Uphold. If you guys want to go out there and get a little XRP, you can do it over on Uphold's platform. And the other thing that is available there, right now you can earn up to 4.5% APY on your USD balance. So all of that, it's very beneficial. The way Uphold works is it goes out, finds the best price on different tokens for you, locks that in for you where you can get a trade at the best rate. So check it out. Use our link down below. It does get you some special offers to get rolling. Listen, we've never had this gentleman on before, but I want to bring in someone that we've been watching for quite some time in the XRP ecosystem. Then, of course, you guys know him out there as Mickle. Coming in. Hey, Connor, how are you?
Good. How are you? It's a pleasure to be here, and always a big fan of your show. So just happy to come on board.
Yeah, it's going to be fun. If you guys haven't checked his YouTube page out, just go over. You can search Mickle XRP right there. Some of his most recent videos. We'll be talking about that, going to 1 billion users, and possibly the ETF, what kind of impact that is going to have. But go over there, hit subscribe. I'm going to do it right now. I am now a subscriber of Mickle XRP. So let's jump into it today. I want to get into a few things, Connor. And one of the things I want to get into is the whole news here with Coinbase. This is a interesting evolution of what Coinbase is doing. Obviously, they're announcing their derivatives. All of that coming under now the Coinbase banner. First of all, what do you think about this release of information? Do you feel like this news is big news for the community, or is this something that's kind of secondary?
Well, I think it's more big news for institutional use cases, hedging, and building more complex structures with XRP in terms of the derivatives. I don't think it's something your average user is going to do a lot of interaction with, but one of the things we've personally been faced with is just having some of those structured products on trusted exchanges, right, especially in the United States. Right now, to get that kind of liquidity, a lot of the times you have to go to offshore firms. Coinbase obviously has a great reputation here in the United States. And so just to have some of those more complex feature sets around being able to trade price and just do more intricate financial products, it's really nice to have that in the United States. There's a lot of larger firms offshore, but sometimes that can create potential issues. And also, you're also dealing with counterparties who you might not be as comfortable with. So just having those more sophisticated products rather than just obviously spot is very, very useful to anyone building out more complex structured products. So it's a great advancement there. Like I said, probably a little less interesting for your average user, but still going to be very beneficial into bringing larger, more sophisticated people into the space.
Which that'll be good, I think, for XRP in general, because it's going to open that up to the traditional investment house, as well as potential other structured capital out there that might want to go the direction of derivatives. Which is good. I think that's going to, kind of rising tide lifts all boats. Let's go over to the topic of banking, because now that we've got somewhat of a regulatory alignment coming out of this administration, crypto is now going over and knocking on the door of the banking world that basically has been shutting them out for the last 5 to 8 years. And they're actually coming in and saying, hey, yeah, maybe it's time for us to go in and get a bank charter. You've got Circle, BitGo, as well as others going into this. At the same time, you've got Ripple, of course, which has already kind of been in this lane. Do you feel like this is going to be something that will be competitive to what Ripple's future is from a banking ecosystem side?
Yeah, I actually think it's going to be pretty different. And I have a little bit of a unique insight here because personally, I've gotten to work with Anchorage Digital, who is the only federally chartered OCC bank at the moment. And the way I kind of see this going is that a lot of these cryptocurrency banks will sit as the infrastructure for more of the traditional banks. I don't think a lot of traditional banks are really going to figure out cryptocurrency infrastructure, and they're going to rely on a lot of the players like your Ripples, your Anchorages, your Coinbase to provide that level of custody for their clients. Now, I still do think that there's going to be those traditional banks as well. And then they're going to lean on some of these more cryptocurrency focused banks in order to do that part of what their holding is. And maybe in 5 to 10 years from now, you'll see a lot of these cryptocurrency banks becoming a lot more full scope and really disrupting the status quo and bringing a lot of those more traditional products. But I think one of the biggest pieces that the industry has really been missing is that banking license, because there's a lot of things that get into the weeds of client protections that not a lot of people really focus on when it comes to players like Coinbase and when it comes to different players who are not a federally chartered bank. So Anchorage was able to square that with the OCC back in 2020. They were the first ones to do it. And it brings in a level of client protections that are very important. I think ultimately it's going to be commonplace for a lot of these different firms to apply for that licenses because it allows them to protect clients in a way they can't really do now. But in the interim, I think a lot of these will really sit as infrastructure players for a lot of the more traditional banking world, because I don't see them building it themselves. And if you take a look at who people are integrated with, who they're leaning on, it's actually already pretty obvious they aren't planning on building it themselves. So I think this is going to be a really big step in taking those billions of clients that these institutions already have, and rather than sending them off and saying, hey, we're not going to service this, you have to go use this other provider, being like, hey, we can now do this, whether or not that's them actually doing it or just have an API to kind of their back end to a cryptocurrency company who's better at it. That's where I think this is going towards pretty rapidly.
Well, and I think the banking ecosystem is very adept at being able to develop these partnerships. They've done it in many different sectors, including if you think about merchant services along MasterCard, Visa, a lot of that is integrated, in and in many cases, even if you look at Stripe, because there's a lot of companies that have already started to use third-party services. I know the banks now are trying to catch up in that space. I don't know that they ever will. So to your point, that is a big one. If you compare this also to what's happening with XRP Ledger and them getting it into Hidden Road, this of course could change things up quite a bit here in terms of prime brokerage services. Do you think this will have any competitive layer into some of the services that might be offered by, let's say, a Bank of America or a Chase or someone like that, that would be able to partner with someone like a Coinbase or a Robinhood or whoever it might be that would be a potential utility?
Yeah, I see it as competition on a different level. So I don't see it necessarily competition on like a retail account level, but in
Okay.
terms of a higher level clearing service and more institutional kind of use cases for structured products and stuff like that, that would trickle down to the underlying users. I see that being a huge application here. At the end of the day, normally when a bank is building any kind of structured product or anything like that, right, they're not building it out at the account level. It's normally a larger fund or a larger product that they've built out that clients will be able to get access to. And when it comes to that back end clearing, tokenization, issuance, any kind of more structured margin product, I think that all happens at a higher level using someone like a Hidden Road. And I think this is kind of Ripple's big strategy, right? Like if you want to get a billion users using blockchain technology, well, the vast majority of those billion users have no interest holding a wallet or doing all these other things, right? They just want the advantages of the technology. And if you're a bank, right, you probably don't want to be coaching all your clients through what a seed phrase and all that stuff. So they want to be able to use the technology, but they want to be able to make it as low touch and ideally not even have their clients even have to know that these things are happening. So I think a lot of that's going to happen at the higher level. I think that's where Hidden Road really comes in. And then they're able to go to their clients and offer these more efficient, better products for them that leverage the power of blockchain technology without the users really ever having to see a big difference there. So that's how I think Ripple's kind of always structured a lot of what they do. Even if you look at how they interact with a lot of their clients and on their marketing, their clients might be using XRP, but they don't bring it to the client saying, hey, you need to do this calculation, send over this much XRP, swap it. It's really always from Ripple's perspective, hey, you're going to be using the power of cryptocurrency. And if you don't want to know about how that's happening, you don't have to. And I think that's kind of be like that plumbing piece being put into a lot of these institutions that's going to be the most important part. And Hidden Road kind of acts as that bridge for more the traditional financial product sets out there, structured income, clearing, large equity sales, large currency FX, and bridging that over now to the cryptocurrency world so these two different things can really interact on a higher level.
Yeah, and one thing I think that a lot of people don't realize is once that we get mainstream services and adoption like that, the likelihood of those users, those investors, just in everyday people, they're going to start to explore things. And I think that's when maybe they start to get into, the XRP Ledger ecosystem, start to understand how they can go out there and truly get into crypto in general. Hopefully they're watching our shows.
Well, I know we have a DeFi segment later, so more than happy
Yeah,
to
we're gonna
jump
hit
into
it.
that specifically. It's a very interesting question. I think I have a different viewpoint than you might expect there.
All right, well, good. Let's get into this, and that is a potential national XRP reserve. Now, this was a little bit high there for a minute back here in February after, Garlinghouse and the team of Ripple made their Mar-a-Lago Accord meeting. I feel like it seems like everybody's in Mar-a-Lago these days. But now it's dropped down to around 20% possibility. What do you think? Do you think we're going to get XRP in the reserve?
I do hope if there is an XRP reserve, there's a little bit more of a reason for it. I would love to see some kind of higher level partnership between Ripple and the United States government and have some liquidity reasons to be holding a significant portion of XRP. If it is just on the investment standpoint, if it's just like, hey, we want to be able to hold and allocate to this asset, I mean, that's great as well. But I don't know if I necessarily have any kind of idea on when the government would kind of say, hey, now's the time we want to start allocating to more crypto assets other than Bitcoin. I mean, to be honest, it kind of seemed like that was the plan. And then a subset of people got kind of mad about it and were complaining, and then they walked it back. So I don't know. To me, it seems like they had this idea and this concept, and then you had some infighting on what actually got pushed across. So I don't know how powerful that is. I don't know if it was more of, okay, we'll appease you in the short term and then we'll do what we wanted to over the long term, or they like totally flipped their idea and now they don't want to touch anything other than Bitcoin. That's what I'm not really sure about. I mean, over the long run, I don't think it really matters because I think these technologies will prove themselves out, and the United States government will kind of be sitting there in the same way they kind of ignored Bitcoin for so long, saying, hey, well, now we're ignoring this other thing that we wanted to be able to hold as a reserve, and we didn't do it because there was controversy at the time. But I think more adoption, more price appreciation for the underlying asset, and we'll be kind of back in the same exact thing where now it's XRP being added, and then some other community will say, oh, well, why isn't our thing being added? And as these things get more and more adopted, it will be easier for them to justify it and kind of get through it. But yeah, I think ultimately at the end of the day, I think the entire decision-making process there was a little fuzzy, and probably time more than anything fixes that.
Well, and you kind of have to compare a little bit because in this, there's no other crypto that has been in the crosshairs, at least from a legal standpoint, now with a fine that maybe the Treasury Department could reroute that fine and say, well, we're going to take that fine and just turn it into XRP tokens, put it in the strategic reserve. Maybe that would be an angle in which the Trump administration could pull that off. David Sachs might try it.
Brad also said that he was interested in paying it in XRP. I know that was something he dropped in an interview. So I think it makes a ton of sense to be able to do that. I think it would be very cool to see it happen. But in terms of like what that means for the ecosystem, right? Like for me, United States government holding XRP, cool and interesting. But in terms of like tier one banks actually putting that in as rails for kind of their financial plumbing, that to me is something that gets me a lot more excited than Ripple paying a fine and the United States government having a little bag of XRP.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think the banking rails are kind of the holy grail of that. Speaking of that, when you look at the holy grail of valuation, right now, XRP holding right here on CoinMarketCap, we're holding position right now, 121 bill. So the likelihood of flipping ETH, and this is something that people talk about all the time. possibly if it accelerated, if you compare this, and I was looking at this today, right now, and I'll zoom in on this, if it were to flip ETH, and that's if ETH wasn't moving, now granted, ETH hasn't been moving much, it would only have to get to a $3.33 price to flip ETH with little movement on ETH. With Bitcoin, it's a bit of a challenge. That's almost $29 a share, or I should say a token. So what do you think? Do you think this is a possibility that we could see XRP back in the number 2 slot?
Yeah, I'll give you kind of my controversial take to start here, and that's that in my opinion, XRP has already flipped Ethereum. When you look at the market cap calculation for how they even do market cap, they're taking circulating supply, which is like kind of a weird metric to start rather than just using the total available tokens. But if you look at what they're taking for Ethereum circulating supply, they're taking every token in existence. For XRP, they're cutting out what Ripple's holding in escrow. But from a market cap perspective, all of those tokens have already been issued by the ledger. All of those tokens have been in the circulating supply before. Now they're just locked up. And I kind of asked the question, why do we count Satoshi's wallet for circulating supply? Why do we count the Ethereum Foundation's why do we count their Ethereum towards circulating supply, but you don't count Ripple's escrow of XRP? So for me, the whole kind of calculation for market cap is already a little weird, not counting so many of those tokens. And then to add to that weirdness, if you take a look at what CoinMarketCap's reporting on the 56 billion that they use to create that number, that's actually not even the real circulating supply, because there's only like 36 billion left in escrow. So even that number is lagging quite a bit. Long-winded way of saying, I think we're actually a lot closer to flipping Ethereum than the CoinMarketCap numbers even show. But I think it's a high degree of likelihood. I mean, the interesting thing is one, any kind of different reported numbers from how CoinMarketCap is even looking at circulating supply in terms of getting that number correct and having the appropriate circulating supply probably makes it so we only need a $3 XRP to flip Ethereum. And then on top of that, I mean, the last 6 months, XRP has outperformed Ethereum. And I'll tell you right now, and this is the interesting thing not a lot of people realize, when it comes down to like the allocation of these cryptocurrency assets by your more typical traditional financial advisors and stuff like that, there's not a lot of rigor to it. They say, okay, you should hold Bitcoin because that's the biggest thing, and then we'll hedge that position with a little bit of the second biggest thing. But there's not a lot of like, oh, because we believe in the functionality of Ethereum, the smart contract. Like, it doesn't really get to that. Like you think it would, but it's a little lazier. And I think and you're already hearing this, as Ethereum continues to underperform XRP, a lot of people are asking the question, like, hey, why am I even allocated to this Ethereum thing anymore? Because they're not making the decision based off of the underlying network. They're making it based off of what is going up now. So I already think you're starting to see some of that reallocation. And I think with the case off of Ripple, when you see a lot of these ETFs launching, it's just going to add fuel to the fire. And I wouldn't be surprised if it's one of these things, a combination of these things, all kind of lead to XRP flipping Ethereum. But my last note here is XRP had already flipped Ethereum prior to the case. If you go look at the ETH to XRP ratio chart, just so happened that as soon as there was the investigation into Ripple and XRP started underperforming ETH. And as soon as the case was over, XRP starts outperforming ETH. So it almost seems like we're just back to the norm here, and we don't have this weight on the XRP shoulders.
Well, to your point, you're looking at back in November. This is the weekly chart right now on ETH versus XRP right here. And you guys can see it. Now, there is a very interesting line of defense that we are on right now, Connor. Do you think this is the point in which we see a breakout? Because this is the first time we've really retested this. Really, if you go back, I mean, this goes back way into, when was the last time we looked at this position on an upward trend? Back of September 2018.
Yeah, and funny enough, that was when September of 2018 was when the SEC came out, and around that time, gave the legal clarity to Ethereum and kind of
Yeah.
slammed it on everything else, with the obvious investigation dropping into Ripple only a couple weeks later. So I think the timing of that performance is also interesting as well. Because let's face it, right? Like, a lot of people did sort of know these things were going on. And if you were a large fund invested in crypto, like, and you had an idea these things were going to drop, obviously you had to wait towards ETH rather than XRP. But no, I think this is kind of a huge zone. And you pointed out the exact zone I've been talking about on my live streams as well. I think it's going to be interesting to see what the catalyst is. Is it those ETFs getting more certainty on when they're getting pushed through the door? Is it them going live? Is it the actual voting on of the commission to end the case in totality? Or maybe it's just an announcement no one's been expecting in terms of some financial institution signing some contract and coming more public with Ripple about it. But I think there's a lot of potential catalysts that could do it. And I just don't see that same momentum in the Ethereum ecosystem right now. It seems like there's quite a few of outstanding issues that, as an Ethereum holder myself, I was kind of hoping these things would have gotten fixed and solved quite a bit ago. And it just seems like they continue to lag and nag. And, you kind of see these potential fixes come in, but then a lot of the other issues are still sticky. So I don't know if that's weighing on price performance, if it's just in general, these other cryptocurrency networks gaining a lot more adoption. But I think that performance is going to hurt, especially when it comes down to those asset managers who are just putting money in Ethereum because it's the second biggest thing.
Well, yeah, to your point, and back to the whole idea of asset managers that are really looking at crypto, I think to the point that most asset managers, I know many of the money managers I talk to that talk about, well, what's an alternative to hedge against Bitcoin? One of the things that they always bring up is still the legal scenario that XRP faced or Ripple faced. So I think a lot of that was still, kind of under the bridge in the sense of asset managers. Maybe they haven't completely got onto the idea of this is over, and maybe there is going to be something that will flow into that. Now, one thing that will happen is if we start to see another network move into this. I was looking at the Phantom blog, and they were going into some of the request items. Guess what was number one right there? Adding XRP's Ripple chain. Number one out of all of the different feature requests out of there. Do you think this is a possibility? Could we see Phantom with Ripple available over on it?
Oh, I would love to see it. And I think it's one of these things these other ecosystems should wake up to a bit. I think for a long time it was looked at as like, oh, well, there's like not an XRP community, or people don't want to use their XRP for anything like that. I can tell you that's absolutely not the case. I mean, when it comes to ecosystem size, when it comes to participants, the XRP community is very, very, very large. And I think there's a lot of potential benefit from someone like Phantom adding these capabilities. For the longest time, the XRP ledger just didn't have the feature set to support some of this stuff. So it wasn't that people didn't want to do it or there was no appetite. It was just that bridges were really bad. No one really trusted using any bridges. And it was that the XRP ledger just didn't have the native functionality to do some of these things like meme coins or other DeFi related activities natively on the chain. But I think if I was someone like Phantom and I was seeing like, wait, there's a huge appetite for people over here who want these services and they don't have another way to get it. I mean, it seems like to me a no-brainer in terms of saying, okay, well, you have the third biggest asset, cryptocurrency here. There's a large amount of untapped potential in terms of building out these services. And there's so much market cap and not a lot of avenues. It just seems like you could really capture a lot of that very quickly, where some of these ecosystems that are not the XRP ledger, there's a lot of different ways to access things. There's already kind of native on-chain support. So you might get a certain subset of the people over there, but there's kind of a lot of different avenues people can take to maybe do that same exact thing. So I think Phantom would be a great addition on the XRP side. And I think they would be extremely surprised with how much volume and how much liquidity would come over from this community.
For sure. Well, I mean, you could even throw in the idea of stablecoins coming in, RLUSD, and into some of the other ecosystems as we see that being listed now in other places out there. Speaking of the XRP Ledger sidechain, the EVM side of things, when you look at this, do you think there's a possibility that we could see Trump's Liberty finance come into this? Now, remember, they're very pro Ethereum right now, but it's possible. I mean, what if we could see them roll into this? What kind of impact do you think that would have?
Well, the XRP sidechain in general is going to be a very interesting use case for the XRP ledger because it squares one of Ethereum's biggest issues, which is like, hey, like we want all this functionality, we want people to do whatever they want, but it congests the chain. And having an XRP sidechain allows you to add the full functionality people would want in order to build whatever they need, but still have the speed and efficiency safeguarded of the XRP ledger. So in my opinion, it was a really smart way to build this out. Like rather than having all the experimentation and all these different things that might or might not work, might be used, might not be built directly on main chain and bogging it down, like, hey, go build this in a sidechain environment. There'll be a bridge in order to access liquidity back and forth. You as an end user might not even have to know if you're interacting with main chain or side chain. And then if there's such a good feature set on this side chain that everyone agrees unilaterally should be on main chain, then you can take that through the amendment process and put it directly into the XRP Ledger main chain. So it's really cool. It kind of separates out that instance you have where builders need super customizable code but want to be able to build in the XRP Ledger environment. You can do that on the EVM sidechain. But also, if you have such a good idea and it's such a good proposition that everyone agrees that that should be added to main chain, you could push it through the amendment process, just like we've seen with clawbacks, the AMM, and all these other things, and get that onto the core ledger. So I actually love this. I think a lot of people think they want something and think it would be a really good use case, but it's hard to actually forecast user activity. So being able to bring this onto the side chain, not slow down the main chain, test it, and then push it to main chain if applicable, or just keep it in the side chain, I think it's a great way to square that. And people like Liberty Financial, I would love to see them coming over and just getting access to a faster, slicker, cleaner ecosystem in order to run their business on. I think when you compare the speed, when you compare the efficiency, when you compare the functionality of the XRP ledger, especially with the EVM sidechain, I think it's going to become a more and more obvious place for them to be able to run their business.
Well, if you look at other tokens that have done EVM sidechains, if you just look at Flow, I mean, what happened with Flow in terms of its overall value really started to skyrocket. So that, I mean, in terms of a strategy being used, that's kind of a comparison. And that has been very effective in terms of its performance. I want to jump over to RLUSD because if you look at the current tracking of stablecoin metrics, Ethereum's still kind of holding the top position here, obviously as the kingpin. But when you look at XRP Ledger, it's starting to hold in as well. But do you feel like RLUSD would be more efficient on the ETH ecosystem than on the XRP Ledger ecosystem? What are your thoughts?
I think it depends on what you're trying to do. If you're trying to do a payment and you're trying to use it as like a, hey, I need to move money from point A to point B, then it obviously makes no sense to be doing it on the Ethereum ecosystem. It's a mess to do it over there. But if you're looking to do DeFi related activities, I mean, right now when it comes to liquidity and volume, Ethereum is still by far the leader in most things DeFi. So if you're just looking for a dollar denominated unit to participate in DeFi, well, right now, a lot of those big protocols are still hosted on Ethereum. And therefore, if you want a trusted stablecoin and you want to use RLUSD, then Ethereum makes a ton of sense. But if you're just using to zap money back and forth and using more as a payment scheme, or when we see Hidden Road build out a lot of their prime brokerage services and you need collateral backing a lot of those positions, that's kind of the interesting point where it's like, okay, well, you have native DeFi, right? This like crypto native DeFi experience over here on Ethereum. But if you could build out a more institutional TradFi DeFi environment with Hidden Road, maybe you actually see an even larger use case for a more of a professional structured DeFi environment, right, happening on chain in a decentralized way. But maybe you still have counterparties mixed in here or there when it comes to the issuance of assets. Maybe not everything's done by a smart contract. Maybe there is kind of a more manual prime broker that sits in there clearing trades as well. It's just a very interesting idea because that's what Ripple is trying to build out with Hidden Road on the back end in terms of settling on the XRP ledger. RLUSD comes in as liquidity on some of those trades. Suddenly you have like a brand new cryptocurrency prime broker on the XRP ledger, and Hidden Road's pushing something like I saw 6 trillion annually. That's the kind of thing that could take this whole DeFi environment as it's
Exactly.
right now and flip it on its head.
Well, speaking of DeFi, you look at Doppler Finance and the comparison right now. This is just in the dollar value right here, as you can kind of see the comparison. But do you feel like when you just think about DeFi in general on XRP, do you feel like this is growing, stalled? What do you feel like needs to happen for this to really kind of become a thing?
Yeah, it's a really interesting question. And I think there's two things people are having a hard time squaring. And that's that, look, a lot of people want DeFi, right? But like in my perspective, they want something that doesn't exist. Like there is DeFi on the XRP ledger with like AMMs and stuff like that. But the thing that people miss is like these are tools, they're not structured products. And a lot of people want structured products. Like a lot of people want to be involved in DeFi, but don't want to be the manager behind the DeFi strategy they might be running. So a lot of people really what they are looking for is a way to take tokens, put them with someone, and have some return created on them. Now, whether that's done with all smart contracts or you have a fund that is doing it, or you have some professional DeFi manager running a specific strategy in which you put your tokens into, that's where I see the future headed a lot more than some magic protocol that creates yield. Could that exist? Absolutely. But I question whether how sustainable some of the protocols out there today are going to be in 5 to 10 years. A lot
Okay.
of what you look at is yield farming, in which a token's kind of just being printed, and then that printed token is obviously inflating, and that's what you're getting the reward from. And not everything is like that. But the future I see is like, hey, you're working with an investment team. You are able to get allocated to some kind of fund. It's one of the things we've already done where you can put XRP in kind, and you actually have investment professionals on the back end able to run a tailored strategy for you where, you know what, you're not watching the liquidity pool ratios. You're not constantly looking to see, okay, well, this asset just moved against this other asset, therefore I have to get out of this pool. So I think a lot of people are going to DeFi looking for some kind of structured product where they can just put tokens and forget about it. And that's sort of the thing in the equation that's missing, because the future I see is there will be people who are experts at that. But those people, right, are going to be very into the weeds of like running
Right.
strategies and running these specific things. And I don't think your average user is really looking to spend all day going and sifting through all these different pools and stuff. So I do think the future of DeFi is going to be a mix of both the tools on chain, but for now, a human element of actually running the specific strategies using these on-chain tools.
Yeah, I probably would agree with that because I think you're exactly right. Getting into DeFi is going to take some time for other than the crypto natives that really understand what's happening within DeFi. To get it mainstream, I think is the question. Let's talk about RLUSD for a second. If you look at USDG, this of course available on Robinhood packs or Kraken. Yeah, Kraken's got it too. You can see pretty consistent up, down, kind of sidestepping in growth overall. But if you compare RLUSD, we've had kind of a plateau occur. Explain to me, Connor, why do you think this is happening with what should be, in my opinion, one of the most popular stablecoins out there?
Yeah, no, it's an interesting question. So I think there's a little bit of two parts of it. I think the biggest thing right now in terms of RLUSD growth is obviously larger exchange integration in terms of more people being able to purchase that on their more traditional kind of exchanges. Obviously, we have that available on Uphold, which is great, but Coinbase would obviously be another big step forward there. And then the other thing is like, okay, so there's two people really using stable coins. One of those people is Ripple for payments. And the other side is people are using these things as collateral in different DeFi protocols. In order to get RLUSD, especially the Ethereum version, listed on a lot of these different DeFi protocols, it's happening, but it's a little bit of a cycle that needs to take place, right? You need to get it listed. You have to build up liquidity in the pairing. Then you have to have incentives for people to come in and take advantage of that pairing. So I think in terms of the more DeFi ecosystem level, there's going to be quite a bit of a build out and an incentive piece that's going to allow people to start getting comfortable using it. I think that changes in one big way. When you start to see actual large financial institutions getting involved in this asset class, their decision-making process is going to be a lot different than end retail users. Compliance is going to be of the utmost importance, and so is hand-holding. And I think that's where Ripple plays a very interesting role in this entire thing, where they're able to build out a lot of these structured products, starting from custody, going to payments, going to prime brokerage services, all on the backs of RLUSD. So I think right now we're kind of in niche retail adoption of DeFi. Where we're headed is large institutional DeFi at a wholesale kind of level. And that's where I think RLUSD and Ripple are going to play a very important role. I just think we're a lot earlier to that adoption cycle than you're going to see for more of retail can figure out whatever they can do with these assets.
Yeah, let's get into the last couple of questions I want to hit on. One is the Futureverse, obviously their acquisition of Candy Digital. All of this, because it gets into a ton of IP there. You've got MLB, Netflix, WWE, NASCAR, all of that, DC Comics even are available now. So Futureverse is an ecosystem that is fueled by Ripple, or by XRP in essence. So what are your thoughts on that? Do you feel like this is a huge deal, or do you feel like at some point we're going to see some pretty amazing, solutions? I'm just looking at right here at candy.io. You can kind of see all of this. I'm just amazed that this is now available within the Futureverse platform. What are your thoughts?
No, that's really cool. And to be completely honest with you, I actually didn't even know that acquisition took place. I will say one thing about gaming in Futureverse. It's an all or nothing sort of thing for me when it comes down to success. Like, I'll tell you, as someone who used to be pretty avid into playing video games and stuff, like, there's so many video games you'd go play and you get on and you're like, this looks like the dumbest game ever. This is never gonna like blow up. And then this game, like even like I remember when Fortnite launched or Rocket League, like these games that seem so silly end up taking off. And then you see these other games that are intricately built and so complex and no one plays them and they don't get a single user. So I think that's a little bit of one of the tough things for me when it comes to the metaverse, like the Futureverse. Not that I don't think they're doing an outstanding job, which they absolutely are, but just figuring out, right, like what's going to be that thing to cause those users to come flooding in, because in my opinion, it's very unpredictable. That's been one of the biggest problems with a lot of the crypto gaming sector so far. It's like, okay, we built all these things, but to get people to come use it, it sometimes doesn't really make a lot of sense forward looking on what people are going to enjoy and have fun with. So I certainly think they're doing an excellent job. I've been monitoring the progress. I think they're giving themselves an excellent chance to garner that mass adoption. I think this is a great example of it. But it's one of those things that continually amazes me what humans in general tend to latch onto when it comes to their form of entertainment.
And let's not forget that Futureverse had their proposal approved on upgrades on the render network as well. So this is all leaning into a very positive play for Futureverse for sure. Hey, listen.
I think they're doing a great job of branching out sideways, and rather than only trying to get people in the XRP ecosystem up, really spreading out and bringing more people into the XRP ecosystem by leveraging different channels. And I think this is an outstanding example of that.
Connor, what do you think is going to happen at the Vegas event? You've got XRP Las Vegas coming around the corner. It's possible. Are you going to be there, by the way?
Oh yeah, I'll absolutely be there. I went
Okay.
last year. It's been a blast. Yourself?
Okay. Yeah, I'm going to be there. So we're going to be actually doing some sessions and also recording. A couple of questions though. Do you think, I know David Schwartz is speaking there. I don't know if Gardner House has said that he's going to show up or not, but do you think Ripple will announce anything at this event?
I think it's very possible they do announce something. Now, in terms of what they announce, I have no idea. I know last year it was kind of right around when RLUSD was first becoming a thing, and that's what they announced there. I also do know there's a lot of smaller announcements in terms of the case and just a lot more of an intricate look at everything moving on the back end. I do think there probably will be an announcement of some sort, but what exactly that is, I'm not sure. My guess would be something around Hidden Road and something they're planning on doing or something of that magnitude. But I'm not entirely sure. I'm really excited to see what potentially will be talked about.
Well, guys, it's going to be a big event. It's happening in about a month and a half, I guess now. It's the end of May out in Las Vegas. During Bitcoin week, Litecoin is going to have an event that same week. So a lot of people will be there. So this would be the time to do something big if you were, a project and or an organization that wanted to get a lot of splash, for sure. Connor, it's been great having you on today, man. Thank you so much for coming in. We appreciate it.
Yeah, no, thank you so much for having me. I feel like this was long overdue and always a big fan of everything you're doing and helping out the XRP ecosystem. So happy to come on. I had a blast and looking forward to doing it again soon.
All right, guys, if you're not in the Diamond Circle, get in right now. This is our own private group, and you guys can join for free. It's very easy. We send out a custom email to you guys, getting you kind of an insight to what's happening in the marketplace. A lot of my insights go into that email each week. And guess what? You can also join our Telegram community, which is absolutely free. There's a link down there as well. We only have one, so don't fall for these fakes that are out there. Only one. Use the link always in our videos. That'll get you in. Follow me on X. We'll catch you next time right here on TechPath.